welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name's Leanne. I'm chair of Glasgow City Parents Group, and tonight really you will find out a lot more about what the group does, what we've achieved over the last year, and what our plans are moving forward. So there's going to be quite a few speakers tonight. I'm just doing the introductions. So as well as being chair of Glasgow City Parents Group, I'm also a member of St Paul's High School Parent Council in Pollock. And all of our members that are joining us tonight are all on their school parent councils. So as they go through, they'll all tell you what school parent council they are a member of. There's a couple of our members tonight that haven't been able to join us. So we do have Kathryn from St Albert's Primary, and John from St Fillan's Primary and Kirkriggs Primary, who aren't able to join us tonight. And we've got a couple new members that I'll tell you about a bit later in the meeting. And just to give a special mention as well to Kimberly from St Thomas's Primary, who's going to be helping us out in the background. She won't be speaking tonight, but you'll meet some of our members as we go through. And tonight we've also got two guest speakers from Education Services. We have got Kathryn Farrow, who's a Quality Improvement Officer, but Kathryn is also our main point of contact. So we work very closely with Kathryn. It's very much a partnership, and we certainly couldn't run the group without her help. And obviously tonight we've got Maureen McKenna, who is the Director of Education, who's probably the person that you're all here to listen to. But I'm afraid you're going to have to wait a wee bit until we get to Maureen's section, because we're going to tell you a bit more about our group first of all. When we get to Maureen's section, we are going to answer some questions that we hope are going to be submitted by you guys. So just to talk you through how to work that, if you look at your toolbar on Zoom, depending on what device you're on, you will see along the bottom there's a Q&A function. That's where you could submit your questions. So please submit them probably by about 7:45 at the very latest if you want us to hopefully consider them. And what we'll be doing is we will pick out a handful of those questions, because we're not going to have time to probably address them all. And we will ask Maureen those questions on the call tonight, and Maureen will answer them live. Any questions that are still remaining to be answered, we're going to put all the questions together and send them over to Maureen, and we will get a kind of frequently asked question document put together so that we try and get all the questions answered in one way or another. So I am now going to pass on to our first group member, Tam, who's going to tell you about, well, Tam and Sarah, who are going to tell you about some of the work that we've done over the past year. Tam, over to you.
Hi, good evening everyone. So my name's Tam McLaughlin, and I was Parent Council Chair for St Andrews Secondary in the East End of Glasgow. So my kids have just finished 6 years, so this is my last event with Glasgow City Parents, and I'm stepping down. So our school is actually quite a large music department, and over the last year, COVID rules led to new guidelines on how music lessons were taught. Some of the restrictions meant that pupils couldn't sing in school, or they couldn't get woodwind lessons. The SQA felt were doing little to compensate for the upcoming exams. I felt this was an issue the group could look at. The group had a quick discussion and realised this was actually a widespread issue. So I took on the task of how you could support parents with this issue. So after speaking to a number of people, like from pupils, teachers and parents, we ended up creating a national parental survey to find out how much this impact was having. Parents responded from several authorities across Scotland, and we found that the restrictions were having a severe impact, both musical and from a mental health point of view. I also looked at what current research was available on like aerosol spread by playing wind instruments, and I believe that Education Scotland's guidance was outdated. So I decided to put all this together into a report that we could send to Education Scotland to highlight the issues and influence a change in the guidelines. So essentially the report was to highlight three things. So that was one, the impact the restrictions of music lessons were having on our young people. Two, to highlight the current research and compare this to the guidance given out by Education Scotland. And three, to push the SQA to consider how the restrictions were impacting our young people's exam preparation. So this was finished for about last October, and we sent it to a number of local MSPs, the Education Secretary, Glasgow City Council, and a number of interested groups. In fact, my own MSP, Ivan McKee, supported the report. And finally, in January, I received a response from Deputy First Minister and the Education Minister at the time, John Swinney. There was a detailed response, and it said it had listened to voices of parent groups like ours, teachers and pupils that we had gathered, and they decided to allow music lessons to return to school. So I'm telling you this because this is a good example of what parents can actually achieve. Your voice can actually make a big difference and can reach decision makers. It was also a good opportunity for me and the group to work with Create. So that's the group within Glasgow City Council that provides music services to schools and around the city. It gave me a better understanding of how they're actually supporting the young people. We also get a chance to look at the new website that we're developing and give input. So I can give you another example of what we do. So over the last 2 years, Glasgow City Parents Group have worked with the Mental Health Foundation Scotland on their new Scots project called Voice and Visibility. The project supports and encourages refugee and asylum seeker families to engage with civic forums and particular parent councils, because it's found that involvement in such forums can be beneficial in your mental health. So we work very closely with a refugee policy officer to research some of the barriers to engagement and look for solutions. In fact, we recently met with the policy officer, a few Glasgow Parent Council members and some organisations who are already actively engaging with this community. We participated in our research over the summer and helped shape some of that research. In fact, we're also planning to collaborate with Mental Health Foundation Scotland to create a suite of resources and training that will help support parent councils to engage more with refugee and asylum seeker families and encourage more diversity within parent councils. We're also hoping to create resources for the families to support them through the Scottish education system and just help them understand what a parent council does and how it benefits getting involved. So thank you for your time, and I'd now like to hand you over to Sarah, who can tell you about some of the other projects we're doing. Sarah.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, everybody. My name is Sarah, and I am the chairperson for Lawrence Street Primary School. I've got a few examples of more work that we've done throughout the years. 2 years. So in September 2020, we started a monthly parent council forum that we coined with the term Chinwags. We wanted to bring parent council members from across the city to share ideas, solve problems, and basically support one another. With the advantage of using Zoom now, it was a lot easier for members to attend. The monthly Chinwags have been going from strength to strength, with regularly 20 to 30 parent council members attending. It's a great way for our group to gather feedback and find out what are the common issues across the city, and we can give support to the parent councillors which come. It opens up communication between parent councils, sharing resources and being able to bounce ideas off one another. The Chinwags were on a summer holiday as well, but they will be starting up again in September. They're held every second Wednesday of the month. So if you're interested in attending one, on behalf of your parent council, look out for the social media, on social media for the event registrations. Over the past 18 months, the Glasgow City Parents Group has built trust and strong partnerships across different departments of Glasgow City Council, not just the education services. We've also established good working relationships with many external partners. In the council, we have worked with the road safety team to promote active travel and safer traffic around schools. We are set to pilot a new social media campaign in September that we have worked with the team on to promote safer driving behaviours around schools. We have worked with the Educational and Psychological Services on a number of webinars and focus groups, and we have also given feedback and advice to Benefits and Financial Inclusion team, and recently we've facilitated workshops for the council for a new user app. Another key partnership we have built is with Police Scotland, the Greater Glasgow Division. We have given feedback and delivered a focus group around campus officers and how they can improve their services. We've delivered useful parent events in partnership with Police Scotland. In the summer of 2020, we set up short-term citywide free uniform services. Scotland was still in lockdown and non-essential retail was closed. Families' incomes were reduced through furlough and redundancy, and there was a lot of uncertainty around the upcoming school year. We wanted to support families with a free uniform package to help reduce some stress in their lives. We teamed up with 2 existing services that worked on a smaller scale. We put a call out for uniform donations with our own chairperson receiving the donations at our home. We were overwhelmed with responses. Families then emailed us to request a uniform package in a discreet and confidential way. Over the 5 weeks we ran the service, we received almost 400 requests for uniforms and recycled over 4,000 items of school uniform, including shoes and bags. These are just a few of the examples that are work that the group has achieved over the past year. Next up is Kathryn Farrow with an update on Glasgow City Council's new Parental Involvement Strategy. Thanks, Kathryn.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm delighted to be here tonight, and I think I don't need to describe my role because Leanne has done that very effectively at the beginning of the session. So I want to touch on 2 things tonight in the time that I've been given. And the first of those, it wouldn't have got to the stage that it's at unless Glasgow City Parents Group had worked with us. So Kimberly in particular gets special mention here because Kimberly has been really involved in this and has been part of the consultation that has the consultation groups that have been held with staff and with parents and carers. So the strategy, why do we need a parental involvement and engagement strategy? Well, over the last year, we have seen that parents and carers play an absolutely vital role in the education of children and a vital role in our school communities. And the strategy has had to evolve, and we've all changed how we work. So it's a good time to be coming up with a new strategy that will describe how we are going to support, nurture and encourage parental involvement and engagement in children's learning and in the work of our schools and in our service overall. So we have produced, with lots of input from various people, we have come up with a document that sets that out. And it's a very, very brief document. It's actually a 2-page document. And we undertook consultation on that with parents and carers. And then in June with school leaders, so that was head teachers and deputy heads, and that's where Kimberly helped me with that consultation. So the big messages coming from the consultation were that everybody liked the document. They liked the fact that it was a brief document and it recognised the important role that parents and carers and parent councils play in the life of our schools. So they also gave us some very clear messages. It's brief, it's 2 pages, but we would like you to give us as an infographic. So they wanted something that described what we were going to do using pictures. You'll see many people using infographics. Education Scotland use a lot of them. So that's our next step, is to actually get this into an infographic format. So it will still be there as the 2-page document, but there'll be something with few pictures to describe what our plan is in the coming year. We also need to prepare an action plan, because it's all good and well having a strategy, but we need to bring that to life. So behind that strategy, there will be an action plan, and we've already started to talk about what needs to go into that plan to make it a live document. The people on the call, particularly the parents, but also some of our school staff, felt that we needed to have a toolkit for parent councils to support members in their role. You know, if we were going to continue to have parent councils playing such a vital role, we needed to support people to fulfil that role. There can be times where parent councils step down. You've already heard Tam say that he's about to leave St Andrews Secondary. That leaves a gap. Quite often people move on, and then there's a brand new parent council that often, it takes a bit of time to get up and running. So they've asked us to produce a toolkit, and we've already talked a little bit about the content. I've talked to Kimberly and to Sarah and to Leanne about that, and there is very much a partnership project there, because that will be a piece of work that is carried out by Glasgow City Parents Group in partnership with us in Education Services. So that's where we're at with the strategy. Some of the key themes that came out of that strategy I felt were worth mentioning, because there's some big messages in here that we need to take forward. And the first of those, again, you might notice that this would be from parents and carers, was that the approachability of the head teacher is key. And if we can get that relationship right between parents, carers, school staff, the head teacher and the parent council in particular, then it all works so much better. So that was a big, big message coming through to us. Good two-way communication, we were told, is patchy and can be more problematic in secondary schools. So parents telling us that, they might ask a question or they might contact the school, and it's not always clear when they will get an answer to that. So that's something that we need to begin to address as part of the strategy. Now, it was noted that ICT and school apps has helped, but we don't have the same apps everywhere, and some are noted as being better for two-way communication than others. So we still have a number of challenges around two-way communication that we will be picking up as part of the action plan to accompany the strategy. We were told very clearly again that communication must be responsive to need, as not all families need the same thing. Some families would be happy with email communication, others might not check email. They want to be, contacted by telephone. And it's about asking parents and carers, what is the best way for us to contact you, or what is the best way for us to respond to you when they do get in touch with the school. We also heard quite clearly that our parent councils have had a really, some have had a very strong year and have become much more accessible by using technology, but there's still a long way to go. And that, some of our parent councils need a bit of support to become accessible and to fulfil that representative role. So I'm going to move on to talk about, the key aspects of parent council work. And the bits of the role that are a must do. So reminding everybody that this is a group of parents that's selected by the Parent Forum, and that's all parents and carers in the school, to represent their views, and it's about representing everybody's views. Now, the second bullet point there is probably the most important, and it's the one that is often the most challenging, and that's about talking and listening to parents at the school and operating in an open manner. And too often we hear parents saying that they joined the parent council because they wanted to find out what was going on in the school. It shouldn't be like that, because the parent council should operate in a way that keeps all parents informed about the work that they are doing, and it shouldn't require attendance at meetings to actually find out what that is. So there's a lot of support needs to go into that, and we will pick that up through the toolkit. It's not just in Glasgow. There was national research conducted, and the same message came out of that research, that this is one of the things that parent councils struggle with the most, is actually fulfilling that representative role of, talking and listening to parents and keeping them up to speed on what the parent council is doing on their behalf. So technology is helping, but we still have a little bit of work to do. One of the things that parent councils must do is report back to the Parent Forum at least once a year. Now, I've always suggested to parent councils that once a year, yes, that's great, that's your legal minimum. It's in the legislation that the parent council needs to report to everybody once a year at the AGM. But if you're only reporting to it once a year, it's not really enough. And that we must be striving for something better, where everybody's kept informed on a much more regular basis. So AGM is something that's important, and I met with Leanne this afternoon to schedule lots of online training for parent councils to support them in their role. And one of the first things that we're going to do is to rerun the AGM session that we did last year for parent councils to help them to do that online until we can get people back into schools. So reporting annually is important, but it should be a little bit more. Now, COVID has helped a little bit with that. And, those who adapted and the parent councils who got onto Zoom they often found that they were getting high levels of engagement. You know, far more parents were coming along to meetings, and they were absolutely desperate for information. We saw that when we started with the same session, you know, with Maureen answering questions last year. People were desperate to come along to hear what school was going to look like and what the plans were for the weeks and months ahead. In the same way, parent councils who got onto those online platforms and had school staff who were willing to get on there with them often found that the engagement levels really went up, and it was great that they could actually recruit new members because people could join from the comfort of their living room. There were no babysitters required, and it was much, much easier to get involved. So that was one of the positives. We have to see some of the positives of COVID. I know it was difficult at times, but the use of technology, I think, has made a lot of things much easier for parent councils. Many parent councils extended their role beyond fundraising, and they became the advocate for all parents in the school and a great focus group for school staff. So school staff were using the parent council as a sounding board to say, you know, here's what we're planning to do for drop off and pick up at the school. Here's what we're thinking around, you know, uniforms and school bags, and all those discussions. It was much easier to have if they could get, you know, parent councils tackling those topics. Also, a great group to give feedback on the online learning. You know, parents were telling us that live lessons weren't always what they needed because they were at work, they were in work meetings. So the feedback there to schools was about recording those lessons so that parents could help their children to access them at other times. So the parent council was a great focus group for school staff and was used well by, you know, a lot of schools to say what was working and what wasn't working particularly well. So the need for good two-way communication hasn't gone away, and neither has that legal requirement to hold an AGM. And we will keep supporting parent councils to get online. You know, there's lots of material available. We can share all the hints and tips about taking your meetings online. I'm at the end of the email. You can call me. My email address and my phone number are out there. And we want to keep building on the success, but we're not leaving people to do that alone. So please get in touch if you need support. We've identified a number of courses that we're going to run, but we're happy to hear from you at any time of anything, you know, about anything that you need to make your parent council a success. So please don't hesitate to get in touch. So I am now handing on, I think it's to Maureen.
Hi there. I'm delighted to be here tonight, and also fantastic to have so many parents along, and I've been tracking some of your questions. So it's back to school now, isn't it? And we've got a much more positive setup, although I noticed that some of the questions which we'll get to are about those first 6 weeks. And I think I share some of your disappointment that, you know, we're watching football fans go in their droves to stadium, but we're not allowed to have visitors into schools yet. And our young people are still wearing face coverings in secondary school. But overall, I am much more upbeat this year. We are in a significantly better place. The performance of our young people in exams is strong, continues to be strong. And our schools have pulled out all the stops in the last year to get everything back to normal. Now, I think tonight should be about questions and answers. So I don't really want to take up time speaking, because I could be covering all kinds of issues, but not the ones that you want to hear about. So Leanne, who is it that we've got that's going to be asking me some questions?
Okay, we've got Thelma who's going to come on, Maureen. And if I can just take this opportunity while I'm off mic to encourage some of the parents listening to put some more questions into us. Just remember, all you do is look on your Zoom toolbar and you'll see where you kind of mute yourself, like where you would normally find mute and start your video, etc. There's a Q&A button. If you click on that, you should be able to type your question in there, and then we've got Thelma on our side who will read your questions out. So please feel free over the next 5-10 minutes to fire in some questions, seeing as Maureen's just opened the floodgates. So let's go.
Absolutely. Okay, Thelma, fire away.
Okay, Maureen, I thought you had a presentation. Then after your presentation, I'll take the questions.
Yeah, no, go for the. I think this is much better to make it interactive than me spending, because I could talk for Scotland. I could do a presentation all evening, but that's not what this is about. This is about responding to parents.
Okay, that's fine. So the first question, Maureen, it says, will parents and carers be allowed in school grounds when schools go back on Monday to make social distance and safety of children going to school and from school more safe?
Okay, so I suppose that depends on the setup in your school. What the government have said to us is keep the same situation starting in August as you had in May and June. You may want to, the schools may want to tweak it a little bit, but it will be broadly the same. So if your school was the situation that you were outside the school gates and the children were left there and they trotted across the playground into school, then that's the situation it's going to be. If it was the position where you were able to come into part of the school playground, then that will be the situation that starts on Monday. The only slight difference might be that just as we did in August 2020 for our primary one children, recognising that this is a massive step for both parents and for children, that the schools will be ultra sensitive about allowing parents maybe a little bit more leeway about accompanying those P1 children in, although I'm so sorry that we are still not in a position to be able to allow you into the school building. Nothing would please me more than having you as parents able to come into the school building with your P1, able to see the classrooms and feel that sense of comfort about where your child is going to spend their day. I'm really sorry about that. It'll be coming soon, I promise.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Maureen. And the next question is again close to what you've mentioned. Will after school clubs, school party trips, pantomimes go back to normal after 6 weeks?
Well, I have my fingers crossed for this, Thelma. I don't know is the answer. The guidance that's come from the government says up to 6 weeks. So I'm really hoping that if we continue to make progress and the vaccination numbers continue to go up, and the new test and protect approach works, that actually perhaps the government will come back and reduce that time, that it won't be the full 6 weeks. But we are looking to, the restrictions on PE, dance and drama have finished. There is still, we did run supported study last year, and there were still clubs that ran in some schools, depending on, and some of it just depended on the confidence of the staff. So I don't think the 6 weeks should be as a complete barrier. We are hoping that clubs and activities will start up safely within that time span. There are no hard and set rules in there about the after school clubs. They are being a little bit firm about visitors into the school. And, last session we had lets. So we allowed our schools to be let as long as it was for outdoor activities, for sports clubs, athletics. They didn't get access to the changing rooms, but they were able to play outside. So on a journey, we're starting there, and I'm hoping that we will have some of those after school clubs running.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Maureen. And the next question has to do with attainment, kind of. It says, how would children who may have fallen behind during the pandemic be assessed, and how would they be supported?
So I suppose I would flip that, and I would talk about their support first and foremost. So for many of our children, last year was such a disruption And it was the routine and structure of school that they missed. And that's really what we need to focus on when they come back, is getting back into that routine of coming to school, getting their learning back on track. And we've had additional staff in our schools for the last year, in fact, for the last 4 years, through our attainment challenge work, through Glasgow's Improvement Challenge. And those teachers, we call them challenge leaders of learning, work with targeted groups. So the class teacher works with the children and knows the children that need those targeted interventions. And what we had last year as part of the COVID recovery was additional staff that went into our primary and our secondary schools. And that's the case this year again. All the schools have received a little bit of extra staffing, not a full person necessarily, but some extra staffing that will enable them to provide that enhanced support. So your head teachers should be speaking to you at parent councils about their targeted intervention group, TIGs. That's what we call them. And those targeted intervention groups should rotate. So it's about working with children in that focused, supported way to help them regain the ground. But to be assured that actually getting back to school and getting into that routine is the best support possible that we can provide to our children and young people.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Maureen. And the next question has to do with what support may there be for schools in older buildings with poor ventilation? For example, they can't keep doors open in areas with no windows as their fire doors, particularly in middle rooms such as dinner hall or assembly hall.
Okay, so we did a huge amount of work last year on ventilation. So we spent a lot of time with our health and safety team and our estates team going around schools, talking to schools about how we can improve ventilation. The easiest way to improve ventilation is to open the window. And it's not that you need to have that window open all day, every day. The phrase my health and safety colleagues use is it's about balancing the need for good ventilation with thermal comfort. I love that phrase, thermal comfort. That's just about keeping cozy and warm in class. And what they're saying is you don't need to have the window open all the time. What you need to do is to improve the airflow, because there's a great deal of talk just now about CO2 monitors, and having high levels of CO2 in a classroom or in a space doesn't mean that there is a likelihood of COVID appearing. COVID appears as little aerosols if there is an infected person in aerosols. If you have airflow going through, the aerosols move too. And it's very, very simple. It's just about pushing the air a little bit faster. So open your windows, maybe not all, keep the classroom doors open. And what we're going to do is we're going to increase our monitoring. We monitored 60 plus primary and secondary schools last year with our health and safety team with CO2 monitors, and we provided advice and guidance to schools on how to improve the airflow, particularly focusing on areas where the schools had highlighted concerns. And we're going to start that again. And between August and December, between August and October, we intend to assess the whole estate. So that doesn't mean that we're going to go into every classroom or every assembly room, but what we will be doing is, say, looking at the south elevation of a school where all the classrooms are broadly the same, and assessing the ventilation needs in one or two of those classrooms. And then it's about that engagement with staff and with head teachers about how to keep that airflow going. And of course, it's also the easiest thing you can do is take your learning outdoors. You don't have to learn in a classroom. You don't have to have everybody in the dining hall. You can learn outdoors. And we've had a huge amount of that going on, making use of our parks and so on. And that work will continue. But it is important that we keep a good airflow going. And where there is not good airflow, then we will look to see what actions we can take. and we'll be assessing whether or not that's a good space to be used. But, you know, with our estate, opening windows and opening doors is absolutely the easiest way to do it.
Thank you so much, Maureen, for that. And the next question is, given move into level 0, will teachers, school representatives be allowed or encouraged to attend face-to-face parent council meetings if arranged and in an appropriate setting, allowing for social distancing, if the parent council decides to go back to face-to-face rather than Zoom meetings from August/September? So
I have so missed face-to-face meetings. I think there's just nothing like it. We did a survey of our head teachers in May, June, to ask them about head teacher meetings, because we've run all our head teacher meetings in the last year using Teams, and it's just not the same. It's one-way traffic, isn't it? It's somebody standing up and talking. You don't get a conversation going when you're dealing with big numbers. So the overwhelming view that came back was that we needed a balance. We needed a balance in our meetings, but I was really heartened by the number of head teachers who came back and said, I miss face-to-face meetings. I need that support from colleagues that you get in a face-to-face meeting, not just, so Teams has its place. We will still have times where meetings like this are absolutely the right way forward. And Kathryn gave us some good examples where, you know, one of the positives that's come out of COVID is better parental engagement in some meetings, because it's easier for them to get to the meeting because they just click on their phone and there they are at the meeting. But nothing beats personal one-to-one relationships. That's what humans are, aren't they? We are herd animals that need to be together. And that's why, I mean, I've been working in our office since March 2020, all the way through. We've been having our directorate meetings appropriately social distanced. And I know that our head teachers will want to get back to that, to start to build those stronger relationships with parents. And remember, social distancing now is 1 meter. So that's your average meeting space, isn't it? Is 1 meter. And I think once we get these 6 weeks by, we get people's confidence built up, I have no doubt that head teachers will be wanting to go back to face-to-face meetings. And I would encourage you to talk to your head teacher about that and start planning those, as we are planning to have smaller scale head teacher meetings in person in large areas that are well ventilated and people will feel confident about coming. But yeah, let's get back to being in person again.
Okay, thank you so much, Maureen. Now, closely related to what the previous question is, will parent evenings return this year? And when might you envisage this happening?
So that is a huge question, isn't it? And I don't quite have the answer to that, because when we think about winter coming in, it would be wrong for me to raise expectations that it would be reasonable to expect that sometime in October or November or December in this term that we would have a parents' evening in the format that we've been used to. Because when you think about it, you know, it's really hard to manage. It's really hard to keep safe. You've got all these different people coming in and out, looking at things and sitting down with teachers. And I'm not sure that come the winter time that would be the safest approach for us. However, I do think that our parents need to get into our schools. What the parental complaints that I received about parents' evenings was not so much about the 5 or 10 minutes talking to the member of staff about their child's progress. What they missed was coming in to the classroom, particularly in the primary school, to see where their child spent the day, to look at the work on the walls, to look through the folders to see what the classwork, to flick through their child's jotters, or when I can remember when my children at primary school, the humiliation of seeing the state of their plimsolls that they'd never brought home, and I would have with all their big holes in them. So, but it's that personal touch, isn't it, to be able to see where your child is learning every day. And I would hope that we'll start to engage with our schools to think about how that could be done safely. So you could bring in a group of parents at a time to come in. Here's the time slot, half an hour. It's not about talking about your child's progress, but it's about coming in and seeing where your child is learning. But we just have to be a little bit cautious about that and work with our schools to find the safest way possible. But it would be wrong for me to promise that your traditional parents' evenings are going to be in place. That might be a little bit later in the year before we go to that. But I would encourage the parent councils to start talking to their schools about the best ways to report children's progress, about the best ways to engage with parents, and perhaps that's in a smaller scale way. Important that we do it, but important that we do it safely.
Okay, thank you so much, Maureen. That's quite useful. And then the next question is, what is the process if a child is tested positive for COVID? When would they be able to return back to school? As we have heard that they will be allowed back when they test negative. That's around 90 days. So would that be the case?
So two things there. There's, first of all, there's if your child tests positive. If your child tests positive, then they must stay off school for a full 10 days. So you take the advice from Test and Protect. The Test and Protect team will tell you as the parent the date that your child must return to school. And that is dependent on the test and whether they were symptomatic on those dates. But it is a full 10 days. If your child is identified by Test and Protect as a very close contact, and remember that the rules now have changed around that. So Test and Protect, the public health are looking at prolonged contact. So not just somebody that happened to be in the same classroom as you, but actually a definition of prolonged contact. If your family is contacted by Test and Protect and your child is named, then you're just off school until you produce a negative PCR test. Now, I've said to the schools, this is not our role to police this. Test and Protect will be giving that advice. We may not even know whether somebody in the school has tested positive or whether a family has tested positive. People need to take personal responsibility for this. But two issues: if your child tests positive, 10 days, take the advice from Test and Protect. They will tell you the dates. And the second one is if your child has been identified by Test and Protect as a very close contact, then they need to undertake a PCR test that's negative, and then they can immediately return to school.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Maureen. And the next question says, is there a way that there can be a contact from the children's new teacher as they go into the next class, maybe a quick Zoom to make the kids feel a little more comfortable?
So I don't think that's possible before Monday. I think that would be a bit of a step, a little bit of a step too far. Some children will already have met their new teacher. So as is the normal practice, and you know, in a perfectly normal year pre-pandemic, some children will have been able to meet their teacher in June, and those kind of cross-class visits may have been facilitated. But equally, there will be some new teachers coming into school who'll only be starting on Thursday this week, and so they will be brand new, and that happens every year. And you know, our head teachers and our senior staff are very skilled at supporting our children. And then it will be that soft start with a new teacher and taking their time to get to know the children. This will just be like every other year. Our children will settle in ever so quickly with their new teachers.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And then the next question is, what is your stance on the government's current COVID measures of wanting to vaccinate 16 to 17-year-old children and without the need for parental consent, especially when they were advising last September, it was our teaching staff getting blamed for spreading COVID within our schools?
So that's a very politically charged question. Well done, that parent that put that in. You know, there's all kinds of views about vaccination, isn't there? All kinds of views. And very much through this pandemic, we have been placed at the mercy of the advice of medical people, of scientists, and the difficulties that they have faced because it was a new disease, that the variants kept changing, and they've had to try to be responsive to that. The vaccination, we've got very good evidence that the vaccination reduces significantly your risk of being ill. And the offer to 16 and 17-year-olds is not particularly to protect the 16 and 17-year-olds, because the evidence is that when 16 and 17-year-olds contract COVID, they don't, in the main, get seriously ill. There will be some young people who will be quite poorly through it, but in the main, they recover quite quickly. This is about protecting others and more vulnerable people. And they believe, the evidence that I have read says that 16 and 17-year-olds, and for those of you who have 16 and 17-year-olds, they're particularly mobile, and they're very sociable, and they can't keep their hands off each other. So they are little infectious people. So yeah, if I had a 16 or a 17-year-old, I would be encouraging them to get vaccinated to help us all get back to normal. In terms of parental permission, if they're 16 and above, they are young adults, and they don't need parental permission. But I would hope that parents would be able to influence that decision-making through positive, good relationships with their young people. It's not that they have to actively seek their parents' permission, but most 16 and 17-year-olds have a strong respect for their parents. They may not always show it in the most obvious ways, but they do, and they will listen to parents and take their view on it. So this is not about my personal view. This is about us all working together and trying to take the advice and guidance that's out there. 16 and 17-year-olds, it is about protecting more vulnerable and the young people with complex learning needs and ill health and vulnerability are being offered vaccinations too. And I would hope that they would take this up. This is it's not a good disease. We've seen the impact of it, and if the vaccination takes the edge off it, then yeah, I think we should do it.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Maureen. And then there's a question that quite close to what you've answered before, but she wants much more information. The parent wants much more information, and it says you mentioned targeted intervention groups, and the parent is wondering if this should be in place for senior school pupils to help if they've fallen behind. Also, would there be a suggested way to do this, or is it up to the individual schools?
Okay, so the targeted intervention groups in the main are in the primary schools with that flexibility. In the secondary schools, what the schools are doing is using their extra staffing to create smaller class groups in the main to increase the timetabling. And remember that in the secondary also, the supported study offer is a very strong one. So the schools have considerable additional funding for a supported study, which is after school classes, which start up relatively soon in the term. Almost all of our schools run a form of Saturday school at some point. There's additional study during the holiday time. They also work with a range of partners. And remember, in our secondary schools too, we have a mentoring program. So MCR mentoring is that good, trusted adult supporting and working with young people. So there's a whole range of interventions in the secondary school. And if you're concerned about your child, then from the secondary school side, then speak to the pastoral care teacher. So make contact, reach out to the pastoral care teacher and get that discussion with them first and foremost about what's on offer, particularly for the senior phase pupils.
Thank you so much for that. And the next question says, can we make our schools do the same as far as allowing parents into the school ground? It's incredibly frustrating seeing differences of educational places very close together, even if it's after the 6 weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, it depends on the layout of the school, doesn't it? I mean, it absolutely depends on the street layout. Some of our schools are pretty constrained. So some of our school buildings don't have the facility to allow parents into the playground just because of the way the playground is set out. And so therefore they don't have a choice in it. So we can't make a one size fits all. And I think the whole rules around the pandemic have been frustrating for us all. Because we all look for consistency, don't we? And what the frustrating bit about it is all these rules just are reeking of inconsistency everywhere. I mean, I am intensely frustrated about the 6 weeks. I understand the logic in it. I'm obediently sending out the advice to schools about it. And I understand why we're doing this for this period of time, but I am frustrated about it. I am frustrated because I can see school staff and parents indeed being able to go out and socialize, to being able to go out, you know, clubbing if they want to, but they can't get into a school playground to walk their child into school. They can't come in to the school building to see where their child learns. I share your frustration. I really do. I want it to be so different for our young people, but we're going to have to live with this inconsistency for a little bit longer. And, you know, I come back to, if you're on the parent council, talk to your head teacher. They are not doing it to irritate you and to frustrate you. They are doing it with the best of intentions to keep us all confident. Remember, there are still a lot of people out there with underlying anxieties about the whole infection thing. So we need to build their confidence too. And if that's what we need to do for these first few weeks, then let's do it, and let's do it positively. But yeah, you just have to be like me and push down all those frustrations. Sorry.
That's fine. Thank you so much, Maureen, for that. And the next question is, what's happening with school dinners? This was very limited during last year, and are the school accounts still operational?
So, yeah, what is happening with school dinners? Well, we've got, in Glasgow, we're very lucky because we have P1 to P4 universal free school meals. P5 is coming by January 22. And we've got a working group set up looking at school dinners, looking at how they're served up, looking at menu choice, looking to improve how children are able to select from the menus, and making sure that we have a better choice. And one of the good positive things that is coming out of the increased universal rollout is that there will be more cooking kitchens. So if there are more cooking kitchens, at the moment, we've got about 60 cooking kitchens across the piece for our 140 primary schools. So some primary schools get their food brought in, and that inevitably leads sometimes to a limitation in the choice available. So if we've got more cooking kitchens, we have more staff, we have more ability to have that fresher food available. So that will be running at pace. And also an introduction of better online payments for those that are not eligible to the free school meals. So I will pass your comments back about improving the choice, but we are working on it, and we will ensure that we come back to the City Parents Group to give you an update on the progress.
Thank you so much. And the next question is, will the emphasis in outdoor learning still be promoted by schools? last year showed how important it is. It would be great to continue.
I couldn't agree more. So, yep, in my first communication out to all the schools, I have said to them, the best thing you can do is keep your outdoor learning going. So if you've got anxieties about ventilation, and get the kids outside. But I mean, we were promoting outdoor learning pre-pandemic. I think the pandemic now has allowed us that almost permission to get out there. But when you see the developments in some of our playgrounds for outdoor learning and in our nurseries, it's absolutely fantastic. And the use of the parks for lots of being outside. So I think absolutely it is here to stay. And if you feel that your school is not doing enough on outdoor learning, then get in there around the parent council, get in there and start influencing change.
Thank you so much, Maureen. Unfortunately, due to our time, we can't take any more questions. Well, we are going to work very closely with Maureen to come up with a frequently asked questions document, and we'll circulate this on social media. And I'm going to hand over to Ronnie. Just before I hand over to Ronnie, my name is Thelma. I'm a member of the Glasgow City Parents Group, and I'm the current chair for Holyrood Secondary School. And I will hand over to Ronnie, who's going to talk about how you can join the Parent Council. Thank you so much, Maureen. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Thelma. Much appreciated. Good evening. My name is Ronnie. I'm part of the Cadornal Primary Parent Council, and I'm going to share with you about how to get involved with your own parent council. So the first thing we need to do is think about break down the stigma of parent council meetings being a boring boardroom setting. One of the put-offs in attending meetings are usually due to the thought of attending an official meeting. Most of the schools have an informal setting for the parent council meeting, and these are usually held within the staff rooms or in a classroom. So it's not the boring, stuffy boardroom style meeting at all. But the purpose of the parent council, it's there to have a supportive, healthy and positive relationship with the school leadership team to benefit the school and the pupils overall. There's many different areas of engaging with your parent council. You could be an office bearer, a parent council member working with alongside the office bearers, or as a parent forum member going along and being there supporting the parent forum. There's also the vital support of volunteers who help the parent council out. These are vital for events that we plan for the kids within the school. Also, we have additional subgroups. These subgroups can be formed for fundraising, maybe IT, environmental topics. The parent council meetings over the last year, and hopefully soon moving forward after COVID restrictions. So some parent councils have been online since April 2020, but hopefully in the near future back within the school settings. But moving forward, parent councils may choose to use both due to the increase in attendance we've had by having the meetings on Zoom. Some parent councils are active on social media. Most have Twitter, some have Facebook pages, some even have their own web page. There's also the school website where most of the information is uploaded by the school, and some parent councils like my own, we utilise our school website so that we can pass our information on the one site. Therefore, what is the benefits of being part of your parent council? Well, there's increased knowledge you can get about the education side of it, and you can be part of change within your school. Part of being in the parent council, we can be part of interviews for certain staff positions within the school, and you're made aware of any refurbishment plans for the school and what's happening in the future. But the most enjoyable reason for being part of your own parent council is a social aspect and meeting of other parents who want the best for your children and the school. It's been feeling part of your school community. So if you would like to get involved with your parent council, either look for their contact details on the school website or a social media page, but ask the school and they will put you in touch with someone and go along and support them for the benefit of the school and the children. So now I'm going to introduce my other member of the group, Martina, who's going to talk about the future plans of Glasgow City Parents Group.
Thanks, Ronnie. How do I follow all that? There's some great stuff on tonight. So I feel as if I'm making a bit of rubbish support act or something. So hi everyone, my name is Martina and I'm the current chair of Garnet Bank Primary Parents Council and also involved in Glasgow City Parents Group. So as Ronnie said, I'm going to take you through some of our plans for the next year. So the first one is we're going to recruit for a new member. As you'll have heard from Tam tonight and some others as well, we've had some members step down over the last year, but fortunately over the summer we had a couple of new members. So welcome to Uli Shakumbe from St Angela's Primary Parent Council in Darnley, and also Annabelle Wright from Hillhead High School Parents Council in the West End. But we still have one vacancy remaining. So if you're a current school parent council member and you're interested in joining Glasgow City Parents Group, please email us and we'll tell you a bit more about the group, though we've done a wee bit tonight. You can hear a bit more and the process and if you wanted to join as well. So I'm sure this will be in the chat later as well, but for now it's at, and I'm just looking at to see what the email is because I know I'm going to get it wrong and Leanne will check me later. So it's Glasgow, so it's gcparentsgroup@gmail.com. So again, we can put that in the chat, but if you're interested in joining our merry band, give us an email. So following on from interested from what Maureen had said, just answering one of the questions, this term as well, we'll be working with catering services for education, and particularly Fuel Zone that involved in the primary catering for primary schools. We were approached by them prior to the summer to help with engagement and collecting information and feedback from parents on how they might be able to improve the service and to work with them. So I think that's really great because I know that lots of primary schools have had feedback and stuff like that in the past about Fuel Zone and how it works and payments and choices, everything that Maureen already said. So apparently there's going to be, we're holding a parent focus group as well, which is great. So people get their views heard and hopefully implement some changes to the current service as well. And that probably dovetail nicely with the things that Maureen's talking about too. So what else are we doing as well? So we are continuing with our Facebook forums that have been successful over the last year, as well as Glasgow City Parents Group page on Facebook. We also have 3 Facebook groups that we use for parental engagement. And the 3 themes are the early years sector, parents and carers with children with additional support needs, and also an equalities group. So since we created the groups, have been running really well, and we've got quite a good number of members there too. And it's a good way for us to engage with families who we might not hear. So like to say, like seldom heard voices. Some people that might not hear with generally get their chance to have their voices heard there. So to help with the forums, we're looking for some volunteers. It's volunteers that run the forums and engage with the forums, start discussions and moderate it as well. So we're looking for some more volunteers to continue with that work. So you don't have to be a Parents Council member to be a volunteer to run that group. You just have to have some personal experience of one of the issues that the group is themed in. So for example, if you would have to have a child in a Glasgow City nursery, if you want to be in the early years, you would either have to have a child with additional support needs to be involved in the additional support needs one, and you would have to identify with one of the equalities groups to be involved in the equalities group Facebook forum as well. So again, I feel as if I'm doing a wee advert. So if you're interested in being involved, again, you can email us, and the email is now in the chat as far as I know. So please get in touch. And now I'm going to hand over to my lovely colleague Kathryn, who's going to give you more information about our plans for the next year. Thank you.
I'm Kathryn and I am the Treasurer on St Dennis Primary Parent Council. And I'm going to carry on talking about some of the other things that we've got planned for the rest of this year. We know that many of our schools have issues with high volumes of traffic, especially at drop-off and pick-up, whether it be directly around the school grounds or in the streets leading up to it. We are working on a school traffic campaign in partnership with Glasgow City Council's road safety team. The campaign will see joint messaging coming out from the council, our group, Police Scotland, and also from schools, both primary and secondary, and also the parent councils. We want to encourage safer driver behaviours around our schools and more active travel to make our schools safer for our children. We also will be continuing with our vital information sessions that have been very successful in the last year or so, and will continue to provide these informative sessions covering a variety of topics throughout the year. They're a great way to build knowledge, share ideas, and also build networks for your parent councils and your schools. We advertise all events on our social media channels and through our newsletter, so make sure you don't miss out anything by following us or signing up to our mailing list. We also continue to provide parent council training. Kathryn talked about this earlier on, to help empower our parent councils with the knowledge they need to work well with their schools, and to support their parents and young people throughout their school journey. As you heard from Kathryn Farrow earlier, we have been working with the council on their parental involvement strategy, which will mean we will be working on the parental involvement toolkit too, which will support parents, carers and parent councils, and we will share updates on this as we work through it throughout the coming months. And also, as mentioned earlier, we have been working with the Mental Health Foundation Scotland on refugee and asylum seeker parental engagement, which we know can be a real struggle for schools and parent councils, and we will continue to develop resources to support parent councils engaging with refugee and asylum seeker families on breaking down the barriers and providing support to these families on how they can engage with their parent councils. I will now pass you back to Leanne to wrap up our event for tonight.
Thanks, Kathleen. And we're almost finished, everyone, so bear with us for a couple more minutes. I appreciate most of you are still hanging on, which is great. So hopefully everything you've heard tonight will give you a better idea of how Glasgow City Parents Group operates and what we do. I know that sometimes it might just look on social media, we do the odd thing here and there, but there's actually a lot that goes on in the background. And all the parent speakers tonight are all members of the parent council, and they're all volunteers. They all give up their time voluntarily to put in all that work that you've just heard about. I forgot to mention one parent. I knew I would miss somebody because we've got a full group now. I forgot to mention Susan, who is part of Drumchapel High Parent Council. So just a wee shout out for Susan there. So can I maybe just ask all our speakers this evening, can you all put your videos on for us to finish up tonight? So I want to say a massive thank you to everyone, all of the group members who worked hard at putting this event together, to Maureen for joining us and just taking it on the chin as she always does with all the questions just randomly asked. And thank you to Kathryn for all her support that she does for the group and for presenting tonight as well. So as Thelma's already said, we're going to copy over all those questions, the ones that were asked, the ones that weren't asked, and we'll work with Maureen on a document that then hopefully we'll be able to widely share with you. Tonight's being recorded, so again, if you think you've missed stuff or you think you'd like to share this with some of your parent council members that they've missed out, because let's face it, they have. It's been a great event, and if they've not been here, they've missed out. So we're recording it, and my plan is that hopefully I'll have that out by the end of the week on our YouTube channel, but definitely before we go back to school, and then feel free to share that widely. Everyone who signs up for our events is automatically added to our mailing list so that you don't miss out on any events like this in the future. But there's always that option once you receive the first mailing. If you want to unsubscribe, if you're no longer interested, then there's a button that you can do that. We don't hound you. I only send out updates generally about events or the recordings once they're live. And I just want to also say a big thank you to Kimberly and Tam, who are going to be stepping down this year from the group. They've contributed so much over the past year, and we'll be really sad to see them go. But we're also really excited to have our 2 new members joining us, and hopefully a 3rd new member, maybe one of you guys that are watching, and see how the next school year develops and obviously continue the great work that we've been doing. So thank you to everyone for tuning in. Thank you to all the speakers, and I hope you've enjoyed tonight and have a lovely rest of the evening.